Okay, so yeah, this snare drum is actually in the '80s Black Beauty, Ludwig Black Beauty. It's very nice. I was doing a session recently in LA with the producer Tony Visconti, and we hired in some drums, and there was a drum that the guy called the Drum Doctor brought in, and it was Black Beauty, Ludwig Black Beauty from the '60s, and it had a piece of gaffer tape on it with the number 1 on it. And I was like, oh, what's that? And it turned out it was Jeff Porcaro's number 1 go-to snare drum that I was using. So we had like a whole array of snare drums, but only wound up using that one drum the entire time. So these drums, this is a 14-inch rack tom, diameter-wise, 16 floor tom, 18 floor tom. You guys do them backwards, right? So this is a 14 by 10, 16 by 16, 18 by 16, 24-inch bass drum. And they're a bit oversized. Actually, it kind of came about really from being on larger stages. These are kind of my traditional sizes, although I use a normal 13 by 9, 22, 16 a lot as well. I used Premier drums for a long time. I have some great vintage Premier drums. Unfortunately, the company went through a lot of changes. You probably know about that. Yeah. And so about 10 years ago, I moved over to DW. I had already had an endorsement for the hardware. But DW, they're really great. There's a guy over there called Garrison, who's kind of like the A&R guide, and used to tech for Tony Williams, and I've seen him be the tech for Ginger Baker at sort of clinics. And they're very user-friendly, they're very helpful to me. And this is a duplicate kit of the kit I use in Blondie. This is actually the kit that is in Chichester at the Clem Burke drumming project. It's an identical kit to the one I use on the road in the red, I think they call it glass, not red sparkle. And the cymbals here are the ones that Zildjian A Customs that actually I got familiar with them when they were doing a big kind of sponsorship with Vinnie Carluta at one time, and he was using these. And they're kind of resonant, you know, they're not as, let's say, as defined as like K's, but I sort of like the tonality in them. The bell's very nice on that. Yeah. And really, that's about it. You know, there's a couple of tracks that we're doing to a click track to a program, so I use the headphones. The same thing in the legitimate Blondie. There's maybe half of the set is to click and to programs, and the other half is just kind of free form. I'm a big believer in the spontaneity and improvisational aspects of live performance in general. You know, it's kind of like, you know, as long as you start together and end together, you know, sort of more of the sort of improvisational jazz kind of oriented side of things somewhat. The anything can happen ideas, like, you know, sometimes the mistakes are the best parts of things. Yeah,
the cool ideas.
Yeah, and I use the basic Remo heads, ambassadors or emperors. I think this is an ambassador on here. These are emperors on here, and the clear bottoms. And then, you know, I'm left-handed, so I'm playing a right-handed kit.
Saying that, yeah. Well, I noticed last night, last week, all your like snare work, and where I would go right, left, right, you just go left, right, left.
Yeah, I try to practice 16th notes, you know. I'm leading with the right, but if I play with the left, it's a little. I'm just oriented to leading. But I also, I do try to lead with the right a lot too, but I kind of make almost a conscious decision, whereas if I'm leading with the left, I'm just kind of just... Obviously the thing is you kind of end up on a kind of a paradiddle.
Yeah.
Otherwise you'd have to go, if you know, because the last two beats will you get over to that, otherwise you'd be like so. I mean, doubles and triples back to front, front to back, kind of helps with the coordination for me. And, you know, that's really about it. I mean, it turns out my favorite drummer, Ringo Starr, is
I was
left-handed.
gonna say, yeah.
But he always does interviews. He claims that he can't go around the kit like that, which I find hard to believe. But I've seen him in interviews where he says, like, come together, he has to go. He can't go. Supposedly. I mean, every time I play traditionally, which I learned how to, I'm not calloused here. I know people get kind of calloused over here so they can play like that. I kind of prefer to just play match grip. Anyway, that's really about the kit then.
What's your favourite Blondie track to play? Because my favourite is Heart of Glass. Because of that, well, I play the bit in the middle of the bridge when the time changes.
Oh,
just
yeah,
for
that's-
that 2 bars.
Yeah.
My favourite part.
Yeah,
Because it's
that's a
so
good groove, you know, just the basic. You know, basic disco groove. To me, it's all really like one song, funny enough.
Yeah.
You know, just a continuous performance. It just really, I don't really think, oh, I really like playing this song more than this. You know, and then it just depends how you're feeling too. You know, if you're up for the ones that are a little more physically, you know, a little harder to pull off physically.
Yeah.
But in general, I just try to feel good, have a good time. So.